Along with extra time and lower instances of unpredictable weather, there are a variety of benefits that come with fall ESN application. Learn more at smartnitrogen.com.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Monday edition of the show. Hey, thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Also, a big shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast as well, which people can get wherever they get their podcasts. And yeah, great weekend. Yes, it was beautiful weather. It was a perfect fall weekend here in Lethbridge, Alberta. A little bit of wind on Saturday, but overall, not too bad. Beautiful Sunday weather for sure. Great, and I mean great Saturday of college football. Great weekend. Like from college, I watch game day every Saturday morning pretty religiously, and it was a great show from Cal. Kid kicked a field goal for $100,000. It was amazing. And then the games throughout the day were fantastic. And yeah, fall is a great time. Love it. Okay, today on the program, we are going to talk agronomy, of course, because it is Mondays. That's what we do around here. Peter Johnson and I are going to be a little bit different, though, today. We are going to answer your emails. We've got a bunch of emails that have come in, and we're going to get to a few of them. You can continue this trend of asking questions, providing commentary. Maybe there's something that Pete and I talk about today, and you're like, wait a minute, guys. Here's what I think. There's no right or wrong answers. We want your perspectives as well. You can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also, of course, find Real Agriculture across all the different social media platforms. You're also more than welcome to call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. We're also going to have today, on top of Peter Pete Johnson, we're going to have Eva Smuck from XiteBio on the program today as well in a product spotlight. Tonight on the Agronomist. That's right. 8 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Mountain. Your host, Lindsay Smith, is going to dive into choosing the best variety/hybrid, really honing in and focusing on soybeans and canola. And be joined tonight by Allison Bishop from BSF, as well as Paul Hermans from Corteva Pioneer Seeds Canada. So that's going to be a great discussion. Both Allison and Paul are tremendous agronomists, and we'll definitely have lots to say. And the best part is it's live, so you can watch on YouTube and provide your perspectives as well. Ask the experts some great questions, provide your thoughts. Very interactive. And if you're an agronomist, you can get CCACU credits as well. That's the Agronomist tonight on realagriculture.com/live or the Real Agriculture YouTube channel. And that is 8 o'clock Eastern. Okay, let's take a break. And when we come back on RealAg Radio, we got Peter Pete Johnson here to talk all things agronomy and your questions right after this.
Your co-op grow team are your local experts because we live here too. Our agronomic specialists stay up to date with the latest research and technology to help support your entire farm operation. Talk to our team for advice tailored to your farm's needs. We have recommendations to help you optimize your crop yield and quality while enhancing the health of your land. Co-op, we're all growing together. Here for your farm, here for your family. Learn more at coop.crs/farm.
We're going to talk to Jack Legg, SGS's Business Development Manager. Let's talk about some of the testing that SGS Guelph does.
Yes, so at our facility, we're predominantly testing for nutrients. So soil testing for fertility to manage crop production. Same in the greenhouse world, but they're testing water and the soil as growing media. And then the livestock side of things, we're testing the feeds and forages and feed ingredients to optimize nutrition and maximize, or at least try to optimize growth and production for the farmer. But SGS also has many different labs in the network, so we can help out from an environmental standpoint. Maybe it's heavy metals testing or contaminants. We've got seed testing capabilities.
Congratulations on the 40-year anniversary of the SGS Guelph Lab. Quite an accomplishment. And you can find out more about SGS to help you elevate your business by calling 1-800-952-5407. And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Agronomic Monday. Protect your anhydrous ammonia, and bottom line, even if they dip below that 15 degrees Celsius, that's not too late to apply agronomically effective, non-corrosive Centuro nitrogen stabilizer. Learn more by going to centuro.ca. Okay, let's bring him in. It is the man, the myth, the legend. It is Pete Johnson. Pete, how are you doing today?
I am doing fine. The legend, the myth. Lord help us, man. You have a skewed view of me. I sort of put my pants on one leg at a time, the same as everybody else, Shaun. But I'm happy to be here because we have lots to talk about. And the weather in Ontario, it was supposed to rain on Sunday. Most areas missed the rain entirely. And so things are just moving ahead. As soon as beans are ready, lots of guys still struggling to keep beans at the right moisture. Continue to get questions about, how much yield do I lose when the beans are over dry? And it's a pretty simple formula. For every 1% that the crop is below dry, so if you're at 12% and dry is 13% on soybeans, that 1% in moisture is 1.1% in yield. If it's 2% in moisture, it's 2.2% in yield. You can just do that math. But yeah, it's just, we've turned dry, and for a lot of people, it is just staying dry, but warm. For the most part, it's getting cooler, but it's fall, and, mostly the sun shines. It's been a pretty sweet fall so far, Shaun.
I have to agree. We've had on the weekend here in Southern Alberta, we had a classic fall weekend. Like, we had just the most beautiful of weather. Also had a fair amount of wind on, I think it was Saturday. We had lots of wind, but Sunday was just gorgeous. It was just, I wish fall had like an extended life, right? Like, it never lasts long enough. It's such a beautiful time.
Well, that's because.
What's that? Go ahead.
Oh, that's because it never lasts long enough because it's ahead of winter, right? Like, you never say spring doesn't last long enough because it's ahead of summer, so it's getting warmer all the time.
This is
but
quite
you get
true.
to fall, and all you can look at is winter, and it's like, oh gosh, winters can be long and hard. And by the way, did you actually have a windless day in Lethbridge, Alberta? Because
we did.
That's a rare occasion, man.
Feels like it. Hey, there was quite a bit of wind on Saturday, period. Like, my son was at a football game in North Dakota, and I think it was blowing like 40 miles an hour. I was, people couldn't even kick a 50-yard field goal. I was watching some of the Nebraska game on Saturday. The wind was howling there. So I think the wind was blowing over a pretty good geography on Saturday. So Lethbridge wasn't the only place, Pete. Wasn't the only place.
Yeah, but Lethbridge is always windy, man. The rest of us are normal. Lethbridge is just windy.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, what we're going to do today is we're going to dive into the RealAg mailbag, I guess, or fan feedback, listener questions. We got some commentary. We got some, like I said, some questions from some of them. We're going to kind of go through it here and seek some answers for them, okay?
Absolutely. Sounds like fun, man.
Okay, so let's start off. We got an email here from, I think it was last week we were talking about tile drainage, right? I think we were, weren't we? I think we were. I could have been thinking, it came up in the Farmer Rapid Fire. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. We got an email here from Jason who says, as I've mentioned before, we struggled to get any tile drainage projects approved in Alberta. I am now happy to report that there was finally a project approved in the Peace River region for a tile drainage company out of Quebec who purchased land here and has tiled it last week. They are using this site as a demonstration project to show farmers and local municipalities in the area that drainage is possible and it works. Pete, don't the numbers speak for themselves? Hasn't tile drainage proved itself, or what am I missing here?
So I think, Shaun, what's really intriguing is that it's not just the Peace River District. And by the way, Jason hails from Ontario. And in Ontario, if we don't have tile drainage, the age-old adage is you pay for tile drainage whether you have it or not. Because if you don't have it, you'll fight mud, you'll get less yield. Farming is not nearly as much fun. So you might as well spend the money on the tile drainage and you'll get enough more yield and you won't get stuck so much. And so you pay for tile drainage whether you have it or not. But a lot of other areas, particularly areas that are shorter on moisture. In Ontario, we get 35 inches of rainfall in a year. We can't get on fields early enough in the spring without tile drainage, but lots of areas that go dry right through the summertime, they sort of think, well, gosh, why would I give away that water? Why would I let the tile take away water that I need later in the season? What people don't understand about drainage is that drainage just takes away the gravitational water. It doesn't take away any of the water the crop can actually use. And so if you're in Manitoba, and it's interesting that Jason sent this from Alberta, because about a day or two before Jason sent this, like about last Friday, I read an article from Manitoba, where in Manitoba, again, tile drainage is relatively new. The Red River Valley, they have way too much moisture in the spring, but because they get dry after that, they say, no, tile drainage doesn't work here. Malarkey! What tile drainage does is when it's wet in the spring, and by the way, one of the key things, and people don't seem to understand this well enough, but you have to have outlet. The water has to be able to go somewhere, and it doesn't go uphill. So once you have that outlet, you're too wet in the spring. If you can take away that excess moisture, now I can seed my crop earlier. If I seed it earlier, typically I get higher yields. It's a lot more fun to seed into good conditions than seed into mud. So it's not just the Peace River District. It's also Manitoba, where tile drainage is kind of a quote unquote new thing. What's really interesting is that even here in Ontario, and in the Manitoba article that I read, they were talking about this concept people have that in heavy clay soil, tile drainage doesn't work because the water doesn't move through it fast enough to get to the tile. Like it doesn't work, but it does work. And the article talked about making sure that you designed the drainage system appropriately. So that's a spacing thing. That's a depth of tile thing. We have the knowledge on how to do that. But even here in Ontario, on the heavy clay soils down in the Niagara Peninsula, it's like tile drainage is new all over again. We had a drainage day there in early September, late August, somewhere in that range. I just forget the date exactly. But what was really cool was I asked some of the growers, like, man, tile drainage in Ontario, we've done it forever. What the heck is going on? How can this be new on these heavy clay soils? And the answer was twofold. One, it used to be in that part of the world. If I wanted to make more money, I bought another farm. Farms were cheap. Like you didn't, it cost way too much in relative terms to tile drain. It was cheaper to just buy another farm, even though you're fighting mud all the way through, right? Now, farmland's expensive. So all of a sudden, making the farmland you have be more productive makes more sense.
Well, hey, Pete, that's the same as like somebody's got, bad alkali spots. It's like, whatever. That's always been that way. They don't ever grow anything. You just sort of push it aside. And now it's like, okay, how the heck do we make something grow here? Because it's probably going to be cheaper than it is to buy some of this high price land. Yep,
exactly. So I still think I think what people don't understand is how much tile drainage can improve productivity. And one of the cool things about tile drainage is it allows the crop to grow deeper roots. So when it does go dry, when we have a drought in Ontario, tile drained fields that's when they shine almost the most, almost even more than on a wet year. You think on a wet year, that's when we need them. No, on a dry year, because earlier on, when it was too wet, it wasn't too wet where the tile is, so they were able to grow roots. They grow roots down 3, 4, 5 feet. When it goes dry, they've got access to all that deep moisture, and so it makes more benefit on dry years than even on wet years. And so you just go like, wow, that is something people don't realize. And up to a 40% yield increase, 40%.
Now, isn't the counter here that one of the, there's some people that push back against the use of tile because we're draining some wetlands and like habitat? Like, isn't there a balancing here? Or, I just want to bring that part up.
Yeah. So Shaun, there's a balance to everything. And so if you're out there draining a swamp, that swamp has some ecological services that it provides in terms of making sure that the water gets cleaned up and wildlife and all those, like, so 100%. On the other hand, it's like your comment about the sodic area, the alkali area, right? So if that stupid alkali area is in the middle of the field and you have to go around it all the time or drive through it and spend the money and get zero back, well, sometimes it just makes way more sense to that little area to say, okay, yep, this probably is a bit questionable environmentally, but maybe it's better to put that into production, but make sure that we replace that somewhere else so that we don't mess up with the overall scheme of the environmental impact. And you're 100% right. By the way, tile drainage can actually be a positive for the environment if it's done correctly. And so, again, a lot of people think tile drainage, negative impact on the environment. Not at all true. If we do it correctly, we can actually reduce the amount of phosphorus that moves off the soil into the water courses, reduce the algal blooms. Surface water has 10 times the phosphorus that water in the tile has. And so if we can get the water to go through the soil sucks the phosphorus out of the water, and then the water in the tile is cleaner. We actually improve the aquatic environment in our water bodies.
There's I don't have any numbers in front of me, but I recall talking to some growers. I was at a meeting and there was growers from different parts of Canada there, and they were talking about the cost of tile, and it was quite wide in some of the numbers they were throwing around. Like, so maybe not a bad idea. If you are going to do this, get more than one quote. That was maybe that's a tip I have for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the end of the day, there's, like, again, it varies greatly, but it varies greatly a bit on your soil type. If I'm on a heavy clay, I need to have those tiles spaced closer together. If I need them spaced closer together, that means more pipe in the ground going to cost me more. If I'm on a sandy loam, I can have 50-foot spacings versus 20-foot on clay. Well, the 50-foot spacings are going to cost 40% of what the 20-foot spacings are going to cost. So there's a whole bunch of factors that you have to look at from that perspective.
Before we take a break, what is something that people tend to believe about tile that it actually doesn't do? Like, is there, like, tile does a lot of stuff, but is there something that, like, hey, we got this problem, we're going to put in some tile, we're going to fix it, and where it's like, yeah, that's actually, like, does tile get too much credit in some cases? Is there something you can think of?
Yeah. So I mean, tile can only take away the water that can get to the tile. And so if you have compacted soils, that's why in clay soils we have to put them closer together. And by the way, tiles do not drain aquifers, right? They don't make it so there's no water in your well. And so I think a lot of people think that the water goes down to the tile and in the top of the tile. That's probably the number one misconception. It doesn't go in the top of the tile. It goes right past it. And then as we get saturated soil and that saturated soil comes up to the bottom of the tile, the water actually goes in the bottom of the tile. So it's taking away excess water. It's not taking away water that the crop will use or water that would have recharged groundwater. It just doesn't do that.
Okay, we got more listener emails coming up here after the break. But first, hey, start preparing for next year's emergence with fall tillage solutions from Väderstad, including the Väderstad Carrier high-speed disc, the top-down cultivator, wheel-rich chisel plows and disc rippers, and heavy-duty Wishick discs. Equipment for all field conditions, soil types, and tillage practices. Find the right tool for your farm at Väderstad.com. Shaun Haney and Peter Johnson coming right back on RealAg Radio right after this.
Get ready for tillage season with the high-speed disc from Brandt. Cut and size residue, create ideal seed beds, and level ruts faster than any other tillage machine. It's a better field finish and fewer passes, so you can stay on schedule no matter what fall throws at you. And right now, you can get yours with a $12,000 rebate. There's never been a better time to bring your operation up to speed. Visit Brandt.ca for details.
Infuse some energy into your next corporate event, customer meeting, or conference with RealAg Radio, Canada's national agriculture radio show. Create a unique experience at your next event with host Shaun Haney, broadcasting RealAg Radio live on SiriusXM, featuring exciting guests, captivating interviews, and the latest news from the agriculture community. Contact advertising at RealAgriculture.com or call 587-787-1795 to book your on location with RealAg Radio today.
There's a reason we call it the Corn School. Videos on everything from planter setup to weed control, field trial results, and the latest yield strategies. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com has the information and advice you need to help you succeed. Brought to you by Pride Seeds and BASF. Corn School episodes are available at cornschool.com, from RealAgriculture.com, or as a podcast in your favorite podcast app. Check out the latest Corn School episode today.
For agronomically effective dual UAN inhibition, the smart answer is XiteBio Nitrogen Stabilizer from Koch Agronomic Services. To learn how its two active ingredients protect UAN from 3 forms of nitrogen loss, visit kochag.ca. Shaun Haney, Peter Johnson, both of Real Agriculture, here on Agronomic Monday, taking your, I was going to say calls and email. If you want to call, you can, 855-776-6147. Right now we're talking emails, and we got an email here from Scott. And this is a question that covers a pretty wide geography, Pete. This is a good one. So Scott says, I got to pull it up here. Scott says, hey, I have a question you can use if you'd like. We're currently drilling wheat with an NH-P2085 CCS type air drill with in-furrow liquid fertilizer. Also then using the same drill for soybeans in 15-inch rows. I'm looking at a Horsch Avatar, which has the ability to plow dry fertilizer in the row, but is on 10-inch spacing. I would use 20-inch spacing for soybeans. I really like everything about the drill except for the 10-inch wheat spacing. This question would be 10-inch wheat with dry fert. Is it as good or better than 7.5-inch with liquid? Pete, a lot of numbers there. What do you say?
Yeah, so I love this question, and I get questions about row width and wheat all the time, and I get them from Montana, I get them from Saskatchewan, I get them from Nova Scotia, and at the end of the day, as when you go to narrower row wheat, you do increase your yield potential. But what's really interesting in Scott's question is now what we're really trying to do is add the complication of fertilizer and the amount of phosphorus that we can actually put on, or we do put on. So when he's running a liquid starter fertilizer, pretty good chance he's getting around 12, 14, maybe 15 pounds of phosphorus right with the wheat seed, versus if he goes to dry, now he's going to get probably 100 pounds of MAP. That's pretty easy to do, 100 pounds of MAP, which is 52 pounds of phosphorus. So we're talking almost 4 times the phosphorus that we can put right with the seed. And the other part of that equation is 4 times the phosphorus is dry, probably doesn't cost much more than the liquid pop-up does. Liquid is a more convenient source. I'm faster. There's lots of good things about liquid, but it's more expensive. So then you say, okay, does more phosphorus right with the seed equal the yield loss I'm going to get from going from 10-inch rows to 7.5-inch rows? And so, Shaun, what do you think? Any comments before I start?
Do you have a spreadsheet where I can just put this in and it'll just tell me? Because I don't know the answer.
No, and therein lies the challenge, because everyone's answer is going to be a little different.
Okay, based on
soil type, based on soil test, and based on rainfall. So as I go west, why do we go to wider rows as we move into Western Canada? Why is it standard to have 10-inch or 12-inch rows, and growers even talk about going to 15-inch rows? Drier. So lack of moisture, which means less yield potential, which means as I get lower yield potential, I don't lose as much when I go to wider rows. And with wider rows means less units on the drill, right? Less shanks in the ground, less discs to fix, less repairs, less horsepower required. I can pull wider
fuel.
Right. Pull wider equipment, so I can pull a 90-foot 15-inch shank or 15-inch row wide seeder. But if I go to 10-inch rows, I can only do a 60-foot, right? Just because of the horsepower required. So we get into all these different trade-offs. When we look at the impact of row width, and it depends on which research you look at, but there's a rule of thumb that I like to use that I think is easy for farmers to understand, and that is that you lose about 1% in yield for every inch wider you go in row width.
That's not bad.
No, it's not bad. Exactly.
That's not bad. I was actually expecting you're going to say worse.
And so there is some research out there that says to go really narrow, to go to 5-inch rows, that if you can get to 5-inch rows and you have sufficient moisture, if you're in Western Canada, going to 5-inch rows, I don't think is, well, I think you can manage it. I'm not sure it's totally bad, but now again, my seeder's too narrow. All those other factors play. But I think if you're a really high yield grower, why do they grow 5-inch wheat in the UK, in New Zealand, in the really high yield areas? It's because as I get to 200 bushel per acre wheat, and they grow 200 bushel per acre wheat, then those really small differences start to play more significantly. When I'm in Ontario and I'm a 125 bushel wheat grower, and that's really good wheat in Ontario, I probably gain something to go from 7.5s to 5s, but it probably struggles to be enough to actually make it worth the extra equipment cost. Having said that, by golly, the top growers, the yen winners, often, not always, but often those growers are on 5-inch wheat, and they are growing the 150, the 160. I think this year, 2024, I think the yen winner, and it hasn't been announced yet, but just listening to the discussion in the group, I think it's going to be over 170 bushel per acre wheat.
Wow.
That's big, right, Shaun? That's big.
Yeah, absolutely. It's huge.
Yeah. So I think then we look at narrower rows having more impact. But if I just use that 1% per inch, so I'm 2.5 inches. So let's say I'm giving up 3% in yield to go from 7.5 inch to 10-inch. So can I make that 3% in yield up by having more phosphorus right in the row? And so the answer to that is, if I'm on a gorgeous silt loam soil at Elora or in the thumb of Michigan, and I have a really solid phosphorus soil test, a 35 part per million on the Olson, the sodium bicarb test, or a 65 on the Bray test, yeah, I probably can't gain that 3% back by more phosphorus right in the row. Conversely, If I have a low soil test phosphorus, and we have this data, Shaun, right? Ontario, we did the long-term P&K trials. If my soil test phosphorus is below 20, certainly if it's below 15, then I am going to gain far more than 3% to have 50 pounds of phosphorus right in the row rather than 14 pounds of phosphorus right in the row. And if I'm on heavy clay soils, and we talked about this in the drainage session, right? Water moves slower. Well, guess what? In heavy clay soils, plants struggle to grow roots. They grow fewer roots. It's just the nature of the beast. So now again, if I have 50 pounds right with the seed versus 14 on heavy clay soils, we will easily see that 3% yield gain back. And so in Scott's situation, the real question back to Scott is, what is your soil test? What is your soil type? And maybe what is your yield level? Are you a 150 bushel per acre grower, or are you at 100 bushel per acre, which there is nothing wrong with 100 bushel wheat. I love the fact in Ontario now, if you're not above 100 bushel per acre in your wheat yield, do not even mention it at the coffee shop, man. You are not in the game. It used to be that 100 bushel wheat was record wheat in Ontario. That has changed. That's kind of cool. But yeah, it's not an easy answer. And so you have to look at some other parameters.
That's why I really like when we look at some of these yields, we look at it as a percentage of what is possible, like what the potential is in your area, right? So in some areas, 60 bushel canola, outstanding. In other areas, they may say, well, man, we could have done a little bit better. Right? Like it's all relative. And so need to always keep that in mind. In the areas where, and let's just, pick anywhere in Saskatchewan, where there are very dry years, and then we can go through cycles where it's like, it can be quite wet, right? It's similar to, even the Peace in Alberta. It can be really like this. It's either feast or famine with moisture, it seems. That's where it's a little bit tougher maybe to pick that spacing, where you can't, because you're committing to a drill and the width. You can't just, like, it's not like your wind setting on the combine where, it's just like, okay, we're going to ramp it up for the afternoon, or we're going to put it down in the afternoon because of conditions. So that's where it becomes a little bit more of a challenge, where you got to kind of, I guess, pick the average. Are dangerous, but you got to kind of pick the average type of condition and the spacing for what you're usually dealt with. Or how do you handle that spacing decision when you've got so much variability in what the moisture level will be?
So I think, Shaun, there's one other thing that you have to factor in.
Okay.
I hate 15-inch row wheat, even though I know there's growers that want to go to 15-inch row wheat just from a horsepower, efficiency, width of equipment. I get that. But when I go to 15-inch row wheat, how long does it take that wheat crop to canopy in the spring?
Oh, a long time.
And what happens?
Weed control.
Thank you. Yes. Look at Shaun, the agronomist, go.
Hey, I wasn't born yesterday, P. I've been doing this for a little bit. You got to give me a little bit of credit. I knew those ones.
Yeah, I give you tons of credit, Shaun. Absolutely. No, but so, like, I think that you want to go as narrow as you possibly can within reason, because it improves your weed control. And on the good years, you're now set up for high yield potential. And by the way, having that phosphorus there, a lot of growers in Western Canada have been shorting themselves for phosphorus. So to have the dry fertilizer there, have 50 pounds of phosphorus instead of 14 pounds of phosphorus, long term is going to maintain your soil tests better. And then if you have it on 10-inch centers, when you plant your canola crop, like, it's easier down the road for other crops to find those zones. After 2 years, where you put that band of phosphorus, the phosphorus level in that band is still at least 10 times higher than it is where you didn't put the band. That's Illinois work, or pardon me, Indiana work. Like, phosphorus doesn't move. You keep the band there. So then if you have it every 10 inches, other crops can access it more easily. I think that's also a win.
This is a fun discussion. This all stemmed from a question from Scott. If you have another follow-up question to this, or maybe a passionate take where you think that, maybe we missed an angle, Pete missed an angle. I think I had my piece covered, but Pete missed something. You can definitely send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. I find this whole discussion fascinating because I also detect when we talk to the audience, some passion behind their choice. And this is one of those things that we're passionate about, is the row spacing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And
you're picking that up too. Okay.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I sent my comments back to Scott, and his response to me was, well, thanks. That really helps. I have yet to make the decision. At least I will be better informed when I make that decision. So it's not an easy decision, man. It's fun.
Yeah. Well, especially because we're committing to something, right? It's not like we can just, especially if bit of an economic downturn here, like, not moving equipment as readily as maybe we would in really, really heady times. You're committing maybe for a longer period, a series of years as well. So yeah, interesting thoughts. Hey, nitrogen fertilizer is your farm's number one expense. Farmers are working together through Genesis Fertilizers to solve the problem of high prices and security of supply by planning a state-of-the-art nitrogen plant. Security and earnings through ownership is the solution. Visit Genesis today at genesisfertilizers.com to learn more. Now, when we come back on RealAg Radio, we got a product spotlight with XiteBio, and then we'll finish up with Peter E. P. Johnson and your emails right after this.
Calling all Montana, Dakotas, and northern Minnesota growers, are you looking for a profitable addition to your farm that can deliver value beyond yield? The new seed omega-3 canola production system can help you unlock a guaranteed path to market with attractive premium opportunities and an active God clause. Contracts include first-in-class agronomy support and free on-farm pickup after harvest. Contracts are available now. Commit early to maximize your opportunity. To learn more, visit omega3canola.com.
What were the issues in your fields this year? Did you do a soil sample? What is your soil sample telling you about some of the nutrient issues that you might be having going into next year? What herbicides did you use? What residues you might be concerned about? What weed issues did you have? What crop residues did you have? How well do you know your fields?
Get the answers to all the questions you have about your pulse crop at the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. Welcome back to Real Ag Radio. I'm Lindsay Smith, and joining me now is Eva Smuck. She's the sales agronomist for Eastern Canada with XiteBio. Welcome here, Eva.
Thank you, Lindsay. Great to be here.
All right. So XiteBio, it's been in business for 15 years, selling inoculants and ag biologicals. That's a long time, which is pretty impressive. And of course, I can remember when XiteBio really came onto the scene all those years ago. There really wasn't much competition in inoculants, but today it's definitely a more crowded market. How do you sort of explain how XiteBio has remained a leader through all this time?
Well, thanks, Lindsay. Great question. As a Canadian manufacturer, we're selling both here and into the U.S., and we're very proud of our continuous, rigorous quality assurance and quality control protocols that are in place. We not only have our products certified through EcoCert Canada, but we are also registered all of our products with CFIA. We've made huge investments. Our soy rhizo inoculant, along with the other lineup of products, we want the best offering out there in the industry. And we know that with the excellent inoculation provided by soy rhizo, that is our soybean inoculant, customers really love the easy-to-use bag and the box packaging, the flowability of the liquid inoculant, and the most important is it doesn't cause any stickiness or bridging once applied to the soybean seed. First-time customers trying soy rhizo, they just really don't go back to their supplier. They love the product. And it's our customer successes. That is what I really, really believe that has built our business over the time. What mainly differentiates us from the competition is that we're not owned by a huge corporate company selling different products such as chemical and seed. We are solely focused on inoculants and ag biologicals.
Now, XiteBio does have a dual action soybean inoculant. Tell me more about that. What does a dual action soybean inoculant really mean?
Well, it really is. It's a co-pack. It's a co-pack called XiteBio OptiPlus for soybeans, and it offers a soybean soy rhizo in one bag and a phosphorus solubilizing product in the other. And then in combination, this product applied in furrow at time of planting. So not only are you getting the nitrogen fixation for the soybeans, but you're also making more nutrients available to the plant, thereby increasing the overall growth and yield potential. Soybean growers are always looking for ways to increase their overall farm yield average, and we believe that by adding a biological to their farm cropping plan is just one simple way.
Oh, phosphorus is so important, of course, to that soybean crop as well. So that is a big plus, absolutely. Now, when we hear inoculants, of course, we think things like soybeans. But do you have products that would work for wheat or for corn? What are the options there for growers that are looking at cereal crops?
Absolutely, yes. We have a phosphorus solubilizing growth promoting products, not only on oil seeds, we have it on cereals, legumes, tubers such as potatoes and sugar beets. And recently, we just registered on various vegetable crops, both row and in greenhouse. So all of these products are based on our plant growth promoting rhizobia platform. That's PGPR. And we've introducing a beneficial bacterium into the soil that vigorously colonizes the plant roots and solubilizes the soil-bound phosphorus. And in combination, the bacteria is producing growth phytohormones, which are important for plants, nutrients uptake, and iron chelation in the higher pH soils. So overall, the beneficiation is the earlier root development and the increased overall plant growth. And we think that with a release of phosphorus to the various plants, we've seen in our yield trials bumps of around 7 to 10% on average. So for more details, including the hundreds of fields of conducted field trials here in both Canada and the US, please visit our website at XiteBio.ca.
That's right. All right. So that's Xite. That's XITE. .ca. That's right. There you go. Xite with an X. All right. Eva, thank you so much for joining me and sharing about XiteBio's amazing products. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Have a great day.
All right. We'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
Advanced canola trait technology is here. And it's soon to be the talk of the town. Optimum Glide delivers excellent yield potential and agronomic trait performance. Improved crop safety. Enhanced weed control. And a wider window of application. You're going to want to see this. Learn more at OptimumGlide.ca.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
And we are back here on RealAg Radio on Agronomic Monday. Hey, experience the most efficient system for delivering sulfur and phosphate to meet your crop's needs with Smart Nutrition MAP plus MST. Okay, we are talking here with Peter W.P. Johnson, answering your emails. If you do have a question, you can send that to shaney at realagriculture.com, or the RealAg feedback line is a great place to drop your thoughts and questions as well. 855-776-6147. You call that number, press the number 3, and you leave me a voicemail. Want to hear from as many of you as possible, farming in Canada or the U.S. or beyond. I know we got some Aussies that listen to this show, Pete. They should, a few calls from Australia would be awesome.
What's that called? Emails, phone calls, tweets. We don't care. Direct messages. Just reach out. Like what I'm having a blast doing Agronomic Monday with you, Shaun, because it's questions from the audience, but send us more questions, because this is fun, and it's given us a little bit different take than Pete trying to think, okay, this is what's current, this is what I should talk about. No. answer your questions, that's way better.
Yeah. What are you dealing with, right?
Exactly.
Hey, there was a Twitter thread that you picked up on where I think it had to do with farm safety, where people had counted how many hours in the tractor seat of zero issue hours, or a lot of companies have that when you go to the manufacturing plant, it's, X amount of weeks or days or years without an accident, stuff like that. Is that what that thread was about?
Well, that's where it leads us, Shaun. It wasn't really what it was about necessarily. And it was started by Carl. Carl's a great supporter near Sarnia, Ontario. And he tweeted out, and I think it was about 10 or 11 o'clock last night, on Saturday night rather, and he was pulling into a 350 acre field to start planting more wheat. And my comment back to Carl was, awesome. And there was some banter back and forth, like coffee, more coffee. And Carl's response was, I find an apple works better for me. Eating an apple works better than drinking coffee. And my response back was, get her done, because they have a lot of acres to cover, but by gosh, be safe. And Jason responded back that his last shift in the tractor seat was 21 hours. And I know we all have to push. I get that. But for if you're a truck driver, there's some pretty strict rules in Ontario, at least, about how many hours you can sit in that seat. If you're a bus driver, right? If you're an airplane pilot. And so I just want people to be safe. And Carl worked till 4:30 in the morning, shut it down, napped for a few hours, was back in that tractor seat. And do it if you can, but please, if you're getting tired, take the break. It is a be safe thing. The other thing in that Twitter thread, though, Shaun, that I thought was just amazing, both Carl and Jason talking about how many acres they had done with their respective drills.
Right.
And Carl saying that I've been the primary driver on this drill, primary operator, since new, 65,500 acres, through that drill. Jason said, wow, I'm not quite, I'm also the primary driver, 20,000 acres. And both of them of the opinion that, sometimes a second driver can cause more harm than good.
Ooh, interesting. Why?
Well, I think because they're not used to the drill. They don't understand. They haven't been around it that much. And so sometimes they do something wrong, backing it into a corner. They didn't specify, but it's almost like pride of ownership and pride in being able to make that drill do a good job over that many acres. And that's kind of cool, man.
Whoa. I detect something here. Says that's exactly what the person says that doesn't want to actually do some of the crappier jobs. They don't want to be the truck driver. They don't want to be the person shoveling bins. They want to ride the planter. So like the combine driver. No. I'm the combine driver.
Well, maybe I actually think in this case that there is a fair bit of pride in doing it right.
There is.
Right. And I commend them for that. But at the end of the day, Shaun, please be safe, because if you're working 21 hours and you're sleeping for 3 and you're back in the tractor seat for another 21 hours, I used to do that when I was a young lad, and I actually worked all night for 2 nights in a row. I was 48 hours in, and I was going down the road with a fertilizer spreader filled with fertilizer, and it was a very narrow road, and I just touched the shoulder and the fertilizer spreader rolled in the ditch.
Ooh.
So just be safe, man. Just be safe.
Yep, good point. We were talking. Mark Brock was on the Farm Rapid Fire last week, and we were talking about this. Those little sprints of long hours and trying to stay safe and all that kind of stuff. Pete, before we run out of time here, we got an email from Nick. I'm not going to read it all, but basically at the end of the day, he's got all this soil, he's got all this data on his soil, and some questions about is my soil healthy or not? How do we actually define soil health? And I think what you're going to tell me, it depends. But, okay, so assuming that's correct, and it is depends, what does it depend on?
Yeah, so Shaun, you know what? At the end of the day, I don't think we have a very good understanding of how to determine if a soil is healthy or not. And so, we used to bury underwear. And if we buried that underwear, how quickly did it break down? It had to be white underwear because otherwise the colored dye would impact the bugs.
Preferably clean. Yeah. You should be burying clean underwear because you're giving an advantage if it's dirty underwear, I think, to the bugs.
You actually are giving an advantage if it's dirty underwear. And by the way, Shaun, you can fool that test. All you have to do is take that clean underwear and take a little bit of nitrogen fertilizer, a little bit of UAN, right? 28%, 32%. Spray a little bit on that underwear, bury it. Man, it will break down incredibly fast because it's all about carbon to nitrogen ratio. And there's almost always enough bugs in the soil to do the job if the carbon to nitrogen ratio is appropriate. So in Nick's question, he had done a soil health test, and it's called the SHAP test. And I believe SHAP is Soil Health Assessment Protocol or Program or something like that. And so it's in Ontario, we're trying to develop some parameters that actually give us a soil health rating. And you get a color, whether you're yellow or green or whatever. But there's all these and I feel for Nick because I don't understand it either. So Nick gets back numbers like short-term carbon mineralization, potentially mineralizable nitrogen, a stable macro aggregates. And so 87% stable macro aggregates. The heck does that mean? Is that a good number? Is that a bad number? I can tell you that the higher the number, the better. Nick's a long-term no-till guy, and so my expectation is that that's a pretty high number. It's a good number, but he's also on a very heavy clay soil. And so you're going to get higher stable macro aggregates on a clay soil than you ever will on a sand. You will never get 87% stable macro aggregates on a sand. Can't happen. You just don't have enough charges in the sand particles to get you there. So anytime we talk about soil health or healthy soils or soil resiliency, man, actually trying to understand that, to look at some test that tells you that answer, that's really, really hard. Mm-hmm. What I will also say, Shaun, is that I have a client, and last year he has one particular field, and that field ran 290 bushel per acre corn. This year, it ran 82 bushel soybeans. I don't care what anything else says. That's a healthy soil. If you are getting massive yields, that soil's got to be doing something right, man. Like, I don't know what exactly it is, but that's doing something right.
You know what, Pete? I actually think that your point you just made there is one we don't focus on enough. I actually think that's a fantastic point. And listen, but at the end of the day, especially when it comes to economic sustainability, yield matters, baby. Pete, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. This is getting our week off to a great start here on RealAg Radio. Make sure everybody you listen to Wheat Pete's Word. New episode drops every single Wednesday. You can get Wheat Pete's Word wherever you get your podcasts. Pete, have yourself a great week.
You as well, Shaun. Thanks. It's been a blast.
Now, if you have any feedback on today's show, email is shaney@realagriculture.com. And I also want to tell you about Pioneer brand canola with Optimum Glide, the highest yielding glyphosate tolerant trait on the market. What's next in canola happens right here, pioneer.com/Canada, to find out more. Thanks everybody for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio, and we'll chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.